title pretty much says it all. I'm recording this on my S25 Edge, so the video might be resolution-wise better than what I've ever posted, because this is 2160p video, otherwise known as 4K if you want to be less obnoxious about it. I'm also using the internal mic instead of my, typical desktop mic that I use. So this is kind of a test video just to see how viable this is when I'm, when the subject of the video isn't my S25 Edge. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. Let's keep the rambling to maybe 20% of the video. At least rambling that doesn't have to do with the product that I'm talking about. Because rambling for the product I'm talking about is probably going to be a thing, a recurring theme, if you will. Okay, so to catch you up to speed, if you don't follow me on Twitter, I bought the Moto Razr Plus 2025, the one you see here. Also, I don't know how the focus is going to work. With my fixed focus f1.8 lens, it's very easy to tell if the subject's in focus because the bokeh is highly indicative of whether or not it is. But with this, I can hardly tell from my phone's display, so that'll be fun. Okay, as you can see, the rambling's kind of inevitable, so I will repeat the title is basically what I think part, because I'm basically going to go in depth as to why I reached that conclusion in the video, but it'll take me a while to get there, so I'm sorry. Anyway, so I got this from woot.com, which is an Amazon company that sells liquidated inventory, or like inventory that Amazon, I believe, is just trying to get rid of. So the 2026 razr series is set to release sometime this month or next at the latest. So they're just getting rid of stock because they probably have a surplus of these phones that used to be $1,000, but nobody really bit at $1,000. And to make matters worse, there are 3 phones in the lineup. So there's the original, or not the original, just the base model razr, which had an MSRP of $700. This one, the middle child, the Razr Plus, had an MSRP of $1,000. And then you had the Razr Ultra, which had an MSRP of $1,300, which is on sale for $800, I think, on Motorola's website right now. Which, still not a great value, and I'll get into why in a bit. For some phone lineups, the middle child is the most appealing option because it's kind of a balance between the cheapest and most expensive, but there are other cases wherein that's not the case, like with the iPhone 17 series. The base 17 is the best phone for most people in that lineup. And for the Razr line, it kind of toes the same line of the base Razr is pretty good. The base Razr is good enough for most people that are looking for a competent flip phone at a pretty accessible price of $700. And on sale, it's typically, $500, $400. But this came in at $380 on Woot's site a couple days ago. And the advantage that this has over the standard one, even if you could find the standard one for about the same price, like $380, $400 on sale, is that the display on the front has a max refresh rate, as you can see, of 120 hertz. Now, the reason I have the refresh rate shown is because one of my gripes with this phone is that the refresh rate or the display governor is very aggressive when it comes to modifying the refresh rate. So this is technically a 165 hertz capable display, but like with many other manufacturers, they limit normal usage to 120 hertz as a maximum, and 165's unlocked when you play a game that supports it. So it's, for all intents and purposes, a 120 hertz display. That being said, there are quite a few times where I'll be scrolling at 60 hertz, even if I have it forced, basically, to maximize the refresh rate. Getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's one of the benefits of the Plus over the regular Razr. And then you also have the chipset. This has the Snapdragon 8S Gen 3, which is kind of like an 8 Gen 2 in terms of performance. In other words, faster than any Tensor chip. So it's not really a flagship chip. But if we're counting Tensor as a flagship chip, it kind of is, right? And the standard Razr has the Dimensity 7400, I think, 7400 It probably isn't the X, something like that. It's like a mid-range MediaTek chip. So it lags every now and then, and it's just not fluid. The 8S Gen 3 for most normal purposes is indistinguishable day to day from a Snapdragon 8 Elite, if you will. So that's also a benefit. And also the colors are nicer. This is the Pantone Mocha Mousse, which is just a gorgeous color. And that trim is, and that hinge, like if I don't end up using this phone as my daily driver, which I probably won't, barring some change of heart, I'm really going to miss this shade and how gorgeous this looks when it's closed. How, like, jewel-like this looks. Like, it's almost breathtaking. I mean, it's just a beautiful phone. Opened is a little bit of a different story. The bezels are kind of large. Oh, come on. Okay, here we go. And okay, here's another refresh rate thing. Okay, so obviously I want to turn down the brightness so it doesn't look like shit on camera. But when I do that, look at this. 90 hertz. It scales back to 90 hertz. I think that's absurd. How, if it's a battery saving measure, I mean, I'm lowering the brightness. That should be enough of a battery saving measure. Allow me to have a 25% brightness at 120 hertz. I guess the only rationale for this is, okay, well, if someone is lowering their brightness, they're trying to save battery, so we should, scale back the refresh rate. Like, if I'm in bed just scrolling, I want to scroll at 120 hertz because that's, the norm. Even Google doesn't do that with their Pixels, and Google has a pretty aggressive display governor. I think it's just insane. I think you can modify this with an ADB command or something where it's something that takes effort and it's not accessible to most users to force a certain refresh rate, but you can't even do that in developer options like you can on most phones, like the force peak refresh rate. They have that. They just remove that. Motorola just doesn't have that. And I think it's absurd. Okay. I may not be the target demographic for this phone. I think that's the realization I have to come to, where if something like that frustrates me that much, maybe this just isn't for me, even if I got this for the price I would get, like a Motorola Edge or some basically budget tier phone. But I've been wanting to try a flip phone since the original razr. I think, because I have an S25 Edge as my daily driver. To me, the pixels were too heavy, even the compact ones, and too thick. And the S25 Edge, even if the battery life is average, I love the fact that it's thin and light. So ostensibly, I am in the market for something like a foldable. A foldable is something that isn't diametrically opposed to what I value in a smartphone. Also, I'm pretty superficial. I've owned an Essential phone. I got the iPhone 6 day one because of what it looked like. I like head-turning products. So this is head-turning. I will say, of course it is. But it's just not practical enough for me. In a way that even the Essential phone was. The Essential phone had quite a couple of shortcomings with its cell reception and display's polling rate. So it was far from a perfect phone, and it did have compromises that irritated me, but at the end of the day, it was a smartphone, and this is a smartphone too, but I think the very principle of having to open the phone every time to do something productive is annoying to me. And a lot of people who have a razr or a Z Flip appreciate the fact that there's a barrier between themselves and the full-fledged smartphone display. Like, if it gets that bad to where you need something like this, like a dumb phone of sorts, or a dumb phone until you open it up, I don't know. I'm not that person. My screen time is, typically in the 2 to 3 hours a day range. Granted, I'm on my computer quite a bit if I'm, not out and about. Yeah, I'll be on my computer. My phone is just secondary. A lot of people praise this phone for being able to do everything theoretically that you would do with the phone open on this small screen. But I really don't see the utility in that. All it does is tempt me to open up the screen so I can access the 6.9-inch display here. Because this just feels cramped, even if I can access all the apps I would normally access. So if you're unfamiliar with how, this isn't really an overview or review, this is just, an opinion video that's very sloppy because, I haven't been making YouTube videos for a while now. And I'm just trying to get a couple things off my chest. So there's some apps that I think this works for. Spotify is a good one. There isn't much content viewing on Spotify. So if I'm, out and about, I have my phone in my pocket, I can just take it out. I don't have to flip the phone open, and I have this little palm-sized, music listening device where I can navigate and listen to anything I would want to listen to, right? And that's nice. It's a very cute-looking digital media player. That's, a wireless one, because there is no headphone jack on here. Okay, let me put the volume all the way down. Yeah, let's play an accessible song here and lock the phone. A lot of the stuff I like about this is music oriented, which for me does quite a bit because I'm, an audiophile. I listen to music a lot on my phone. It's mostly what I do if I'm not at home. I rely on it for portable music listening. Like, these little flourishes are very endearing, and I appreciate them as, something different and something novel. I can also, list another adjective that's a synonym if you'd like, to make this video more unnecessarily rambly and long. But I do a lot of mobile reading, whether it be on Reddit or like play books, and the experience of the internal display is satisfactory, but I'm used to better. And if I were to pay $1,000 for this, I would find it quite underwhelming if I weren't completely captivated by the novelty of the flipping phone. So the resolution of this display, I don't know exactly what it is, 2712 by 1080, something like that. The PPI is in the 410s, like 413 or something like that, 417, one of those two, I think. So it's decently sharp and pretty punchy if you adjust the color profile in the settings, which you can do, which is good. But they have this plastic built-in screen protector that cloudies up the image. It's kind of difficult to tell on video, but in person, it's as if I have a screen protector on the display, which you do, and it's not one that you can remove without issue. And I understand it's because this is a folding phone. It's just a necessity. But it does make this display a decent display, but nothing north of that, really, especially if you're used to flagship smartphone displays. There's also quite a bit of off-axis discoloration or tinting that you don't see in most premium OLEDs. Again, this could be attributable to the screen protector, not even the quality of the OLED, but, they're kind of one and the same when you can't do anything about the screen protector. So the allure of the phone is, oh, how much can I get done on this small display? And to some people, it's a lot. And for me, I mean, given that most of my time with a phone is switching songs on usually Tidal. I tried Spotify out for a few months, and that's why I have it. Otherwise, once my trial expires, I'm going right back to Tidal. See, when I go on tangents and I forget where I was at, nobody likes the tangent then. See, I find it worth it to go to the tangent because I want to say something, but you on the other hand is like, oh, there you go again. But then I'm the fool too for, not being able to carry on seamlessly into what I was previously talking about. That was another 20 seconds wasted. But like when I'm taking a walk, and I need to change the song, and I have a notification on like my normal phone, I don't change the song and then go like, okay, now let me look at all the notifications. I just change the song and put the phone back in my pocket. Like I have that, I guess, restraint to where, I don't need a barrier between myself and the normal size smartphone screen. Normal size is a bit, we can get into like what's a normal size smartphone screen, because 10 years ago it was 4 inches and that's the same display size as this, but this aspect ratio is, weirder. So, but like browsing Twitter, it's like, yeah, I browse Twitter quite a bit. I don't think it's unhealthy, it's not like I'm doing it all day, but when I'm doing it, I want to just be able to grab my phone and then browse on a display that's not a little square, and yeah, I can do that. All I have to do is open up the phone, but, that's an extra step that I don't have to do with, the form that is the modern smartphone. I think it's going back to this form factor, other than for the portability, if you're really strapped for space in a pocket, which, look, I relate. I wear shorts sometimes that barely have any pockets. So I'm sympathetic to that, but it's just not very functional to me. And maybe if this display were better, I'm kind of asking for a unicorn, or like something that at this point in time we don't have the technology for, because we do need to make this out of plastic still, or the display out of plastic. We still need to have the screen protector over it. There's still laws of, if you want to call it physics, that we have to ascribe to. It's kind of a deal breaker just having a main display that's, okay, but I don't really want to view content on this. And this 90 hertz thing, really bothers me. I think it's insane that if you want to reduce the brightness on your phone to fit the ambient lighting, like I'm doing now, like this is perfectly bright to me in this situation, but I can't access 120 hertz because Motorola won't let me. That is, I know I'm fixating on this, but it's a phone that was $1,000, and the $1,300 Ultra probably had the same problem. There's also one more thing I'll grant this phone. I'm still on Android 15 because I did not get the Android 16 update yet. Android 16 is being rolled out to Razrs as we speak, and it has been for about a month. So I don't know why the rollout's so slow. It's probably because it's not Google or Apple, and I'm just used to that kind of fast service where it's, okay, new firmware. Everybody gets it within the span of like a week. A month plus, and we don't even have Android 16 on all these phones. So some of these bugs might have been fixed, and it probably isn't a bug. It's obviously a firmware thing where it reels back to 90 hertz, even with, I can show you the settings for the display. Here we go. Hyper smooth. It's on hyper smooth. I call that hyper bullshit. If it were, it'd be at 120 hertz, or 165 for that matter, since the display can do that. Again, I'll see if I can rectify this with an ADB command or something, but I shouldn't have to do that. It's advertised as a 165 hertz display. Give me 120 at least, at all brightness levels, okay? Let alone the 165 you advertise, but, okay. Where am I going to go to next? Because I know there are quite a few things I haven't addressed yet, and this video is going to get needlessly long if I address all of them. So Motorola's version of Android, I've always heard, is close to stock, and it's kind of true. I don't like this opacity. It looks kind of cheap. I don't think a lot of OEMs do blurring well. Apple, of course, knocked it out of the park with liquid glass. I know it's kind of a hot take, but that's a level of very, even if it's not the most readable, it's a very beautiful, very tastefully done way of Gaussian blur, or, just blur in general. This just looks kind of bad. It might be because I'm in dark mode and it looks better in light mode, but this doesn't have to be this, what's the word I'm looking for? Translucent, or, this can be a little bit darker, a little bit more see-through. I think it'll look less cheap as an operating system for that. And that goes for a lot of Android OEMs that have this thing going on. Even Samsung does by default, but Samsung lets you change it. But Motorola doesn't have that like good lock level of customization, which kind of blows. Yeah, I mean, Hello UI is fine. It's pretty close to Pixel UI, but this 90 hertz, like I noticed this too. I didn't have this refresh rate thing on. I'm just wondering sometimes, I'm like, why does this feel like it's 90 hertz? Because a lot of people can't tell the difference between 120 and 60, let alone 120 and 90. It's not as refined as Pixel UI, and it's definitely buggier. But I do like that it mimics the user experience to a, decent degree. In the hand, the phone feels, doesn't feel super premium. It looks super premium, and when it's closed, it does have a premium feel because you're not holding it as if it's a normal phone. It's 7.1 millimeters thin, which is, somewhat thin for a phone, but the S25 Edge and iPhone Air are significantly thinner. So it feels kind of thick to me as someone who's used to the S25 Edge now. The crease, actually, this as a stickler, as someone who seems anal about everything, you might be wondering what I'm thinking about the crease. So visually, the crease is somewhat noticeable. I'm in pretty direct light, so in certain angles, you can see it. In the dark, though, you can see a bit of warping where the crease is, so you can kind of see text, like, dip ever so slightly. So you can kind of make out where the crease is from that dip alone, but it's kind of minor. Like, it's not the end of the world. The feel, I think, annoys me more than the look. If you glide your finger over it, you do feel that divot, and it feels kind of plasticky and just not very premium, even if that's just how the hardware works. There's no other way to do it, in terms of mainstream hardware. So, it's kind of a nitpicky complaint. It's kind of like, okay, well, why get this phone? And the answer is because it was under $400. I got it for $380. So I wanted to try this form factor out, whether I liked it or didn't. But yeah, it's that. I mean, granted, you're probably going to be scrolling on the lower half anyway most of the time, so you're not going to... But sometimes I do find myself gliding my hand a little bit north and, doing the whole scrolling business here. Like, I can't help myself. So, yeah, a little bit annoying, but not the end of the world. What else? Okay, so the Razr Ultra was $300 more, and the difference was the bezels were slightly thinner and the display resolution was upped a bit, which are two things that I really value in an upgrade. I'm very picky about bezel thickness. The S25 Edge kind of spoils me in regard to that. It was one of the reasons I left the Pixel. And again, this seems pretty ridiculous to most people because a lot of people hate bezel fixation because they think like, oh, who cares? You have the screen there. You're going to forget about the bezels. I don't forget about the bezels. It just sticks out as a hardware compromise to me. In bezel thickness, screen to body ratio is design as far as I'm concerned. And it's kind of head scratching as to why people don't seem to be on the same page with that. But, so the bezels on the inside, I mean, the external display, looks pretty bezel-less and premium, and the Ultra has the same thing. So from the front, the Ultra and the Plus, $300 difference, look pretty much the same. But when you open it up, the bezels on the Ultra are slightly thinner. They're not that much thinner. I think for a $1,300 phone or a phone that used to cost $1,300, they were too thick. For $1,000, these are too thick. And, the Z Flip 7 has pretty thin bezels, so it's not unachievable. It's just a sacrifice that Motorola makes, thinking nobody really cares. And I do kind of care. I think it just doesn't look, it just looks like a budget phone from the inside. And I'm just not a fan of that. So I kind of would prefer to just use the outer display as often as possible, just so because it looks cool. even if it compromises on the functionality. See, I'm not averse to form over function. It's just, you know, the novelty hasn't even worn off for me. The novelty just hasn't even appealed to me yet. And, you know, I've only had my SIM card in this for a day, so it's kind of absurd that I'm going off like this, having barely used the phone. But I just find myself, even with my SIM card in here, gravitating to my S25 Edge when I want to do something. So hanging up on someone like this is all right. I mean, it's not worth the price of admission. It's not worth the $380 I paid for it. That part. I mean, the phone is, at the end of the day, probably worth $380 because, you know, has a pretty decent chipset. The display is, you know, not great, but good. And, you know, and it is a nice fashion accessory, glorified fashion accessory for a price that, you know, is pretty reasonable. But the open close thing for the calls, you know, it's okay. I had a Nokia flip phone. That was my first cell phone as a kid. Got that when I was 10. It was the Nokia, what was it? 6363, something like that. It was just the Nokia flip phone. And, you know, I had that for maybe a year or so until I got a Samsung Gravity, which was a slide-out QWERTY keyboard feature phone. So I didn't really have much time using a flip phone, so I can't really appreciate the open-close nature that a lot of, like, like guys who are 25 in 2005, you know, love this stuff. But, yeah, I could go either way, really. I'm fine just hanging up a call by tapping, you know, the end call button on a screen, you know. But that's just me. This does have up to 45-watt fast charging, which is the fastest charging phone I've ever had. But you have to have the turbo power adapter, which I do not have, and it does not come in the box because, you know, 2026 and all. So the 45-watt Samsung fast charger I have charges this at, I think, like 34 watts peak, but I haven't drained this phone completely yet, so it might go a little bit higher than that, but yeah, it's not too bad. Battery life, again, I haven't used this phone enough to know how bad the battery life or how good it is, because, you know, the phone does like on-the-fly battery optimization, so it can be kind of turbulent for the first few days that the phone is, you know, kind of figuring out how you're using it and adjusting accordingly. It's been fine. It has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, so it's not exactly class leading, but it should be serviceable. And I'm not used to phones with marathon battery lives, nor do I care, nor do I care too much. You know, it'd be nice to have a phone with elite battery life, but I'm not willing to make my phone very thick for that. Like, I'd rather have the thinness. So that's just the compromise I'm willing to make. Let's see. Okay, so this has the Snapdragon 8 S Gen 3, which means it has Snapdragon sound, ironically, because I got the S25 Edge thinking, oh, a Snapdragon 8 Elite, it must have Snapdragon sound. If you don't know what that is, it's a wide range. It gives you all the wireless audio codecs you can dream of, namely aptX lossless, which allows you to stream lossless audio over Bluetooth. But I guess because it was a Galaxy equip, or it was like a Galaxy, what's the word? I don't know, it's eluding me, but edited, like a Galaxy, you know, a Galaxy type Snapdragon chip. I guess it nullified the Snapdragon sound branding or the Snapdragon sound ability, because I was disappointed when I found out my S25 Edge did not have Snapdragon sound. This has Snapdragon sound, so I can use my Cambridge Audio P100 SE, which are, I can get them, to make this video not less about this, but these are, you know, pretty capable audiophile appealing Bluetooth headphones that support aptX lossless. And I have a Sennheiser dongle, it's I think the BTD 700, that I put in my S25 Edge to enable aptX lossless, but this has it built in, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's my second favorite thing about this phone so far. My favorite one being just how this phone looks closed, you know, color and all. Like this is beautiful, but $380 for this being beautiful, you know, Still kind of worth it, honestly, because, you know, it was $1,000. You have a lot of gimmicks with this, like you can do this if you want. Yeah, it's kind of fine. You know, it hasn't even appealed to me to go through all the how I can make the most use out of this form factor, because at the end of the day, I use my phone the way most people use their phones. And in my opinion, this is not conducive, this form factor is not conducive to that usage, unless you're actively trying to not use your phone. That's just really how I feel about this right now. I'm going to make this my daily driver for a week and try not to grab my S25 Edge whenever, you know, like instinctually, because I still am doing that. You know, take it out with me, see, you know, if it turns any heads, if any conversations start from it, because, you know, that might be a benefit of this phone, which makes me appreciate, you know, the owning it, you know, because it is just it's a form over function phone. Even if some people think the form crosses over into function, which I just cannot see at this point in time, but who knows? Maybe my first impressions don't pan out, and if they don't, I will check in with you in about a week and give you my updated thoughts. And even if they do, even if my initial impressions were correct, I might still pop back in. You know, why not? Okay, man, I I am actually exhausted. I might have sounded very caffeinated in this video, but I think it's just the adrenaline from barely getting any sleep, because I don't consume caffeine. So I'll review this footage. If I don't like this video, I'm still going to post it, because at least it's something. And I feel like people who are subscribed to this channel kind of are familiar with this, or, you know, I wasn't that much different in my videos, you know, 10 years ago than I am now. So the general population, though, I'll probably title this something to where it's not going to show up on like the first page when someone searches razr, because, you know, I'd prefer to be in my own little bubble of people who can stand this presentation. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you are not following me already. Instagram, you know, I barely post, so probably not worth it. But Twitter, I try to be somewhat active. It comes to me pretty naturally. It's not something I actively try to do, but that's usually where you can hear from me. And yeah, okay. Bye-bye. Enough.